I'm Michelle Yanachan, and this is Fast Track's Insider Guide with my top travel tips from around the world. The long rains are due to end soon, and the landscape is already green. I'm just back from Kenya's Masai Mara, where a new conservancy has been created close to its northeastern boundary. Nyabosho is a community-focused initiative, a 50,000-acre zone for wildlife conservation and tourism, but also controlled cattle grazing for local communities. It's hoped the area will become a buffer zone between the Masai Mara Game Reserve itself and farmland. A half dozen camps and lodges are expected to roll out over the year, and because Nyabosho is outside the reserve and its rules, night game drives and walking safaris are possible. On June 15th, the Saga Dawa Festival will take place around one of Asia's most sacred mountains, Kailash, in western Tibet. For centuries, pilgrims of many different faiths have come here. For Tibetan Buddhists, the date coincides with the birth, enlightenment and death of the Lord Buddha, and they come this time of year to fix colourful prayer flags to a gigantic flagpole raised up over the rocky, barren landscape. Some pilgrims and visitors trek around the holy mountain, a 52-kilometre hike said to bring good fortune. And in New Zealand, the Queenstown Winter Festival begins June 24th, when this adrenaline-fuelled town hosts 10 days of street parties, mountain races and winter pursuits. Think extreme. There's also jet boating, canyon swinging, heli skiing and river surfing. And if you've got the guts, Queenstown is the home of bungee jumping too. The world's first commercial jump was at Kawarau Bridge in 1988. You come here to fling yourself off a ledge 43 metres above a very chilly river. But for those who prefer their world the right way up, how about climbing the Single Cone, a one-day hike up the highest peak of the aptly named Remarkables Range. And South Korea will be hosting the Boryong Mud Festival from July 16th. Held at Daecheon Beach, visitors can mud wrestle, mudslide or take part in the mud marathon. There's also a chance to relax in the mud massage zone. Organisers say the mud itself is more than just fun, it's also very good for your skin and health. Germany is hosting the FIFA Women's World Cup from June 26th, kicking off in Berlin's illustrious Olympiastadion. That will mark 20 years since the first Women's World Cup was staged in 1991. The German women are the ones to beat, and the US and Brazil are putting together strong teams too. 9 German cities, including Leverkusen, Dresden and Wolfsburg, will host the event. In Peru, on June 24th, the city of Cusco marks Inti Raymi, or the Festival of the Sun, staged at the nearby ruin Sacsayhuaman. This is one of the biggest festivals in South America, with hundreds of thousands joining celebrations in the city's streets. And a few weeks later, it will be 100 years since the US politician Hiram Bingham documented Machu Picchu and brought the Inca ruins to the world's attention. Formal ceremonies take place on July 7th. And finally, watch out for the date of the very last launch of the Space Shuttle program from Kennedy Space Center in Cape Canaveral. Atlantis is set to lift off late June, although that might yet be pushed back. Tickets are required at official viewing sites, but many more will be watching from the beaches and roads around the launch area. NASA has announced the visitor complex at the Space Center will display Atlantis upon retirement. Thanks for checking in with my Insider Guide this month. Until next time, happy travelling.
Thanks, Michelle. Now, the traditional guidebook has come under increasing pressure from social networking sites and the internet, which invite people to submit their own reviews and opinions. So we sent Gwyneth Edwards to interview one of the pioneers of the travel guidebook to find out whether she still thinks they're relevant.
Well, I'll sign it up. What's your name?
Hilary Bratt is in demand. Today she's giving a talk about her travels and giving advice on how to get your writing published.
No, you can see that we've come a long way if you know Bratt Guides now. We thought this was the best thing that had ever been published. It's riddled with misprints. I mean, even Ecuador is spelt wrong on the inside.
They say the next big thing is here.
Nowadays, it's a very competitive field, and the audience are well aware that the travel industry is big business worldwide. It was back in the 60s that Hilary got the travel bug and started backpacking through Europe and the Middle East. Some years later, she met her husband George Bratt whilst working in America, and it was then that her career in travel really began. The couple had spotted a gap in the market.
I remember we'd found this wonderful new trail that was just starting to be hiked by other foreigners called the Inca Road to Machu Picchu, which of course now is incredibly famous. But in those days, very few people were doing it. It was very easy to get lost, and we'd written a lot of notes about that. So we started sharing these notes, and then that sort of evolved into, well, perhaps we could write a book about it. It's a very basic little book, but it sold.
That was back in 1974. Now there are over 140 Bratt travel guides, many of them covering more unusual emerging destinations around the world. But over the years, her travels haven't been without incident. Perhaps the most dramatic was being caught up in the aftermath of the Entebbe raid in Uganda in the mid-1970s, in which a plane was hijacked. Tensions were running high in the country.
These army people came up and asked us what we were doing, and we said, oh, we're going to Entebbe. And they said, come with me. And so they arrested us. They were convinced that we were spies. They took away our passports. One of them called George to the front. And I remember sitting there at the back of the bus and thinking, they're going to take him out and shoot him. You know, I was very, very scared.
Fortunately, Hilary and George managed to escape from Uganda unharmed. But these days, Hilary acknowledges the importance of knowing as much about the politics of a country as possible and of being aware of cultural differences, especially as a woman traveller.
I look at photos of me travelling in the 60s and I was always wearing a skirt or, horror of horrors, shorts. I've now, as a writer, become quite preachy, actually, about how young women really do need to dress appropriately for the places that they're going to.
They say the next big thing is here.
And on the subject of the huge advances in technology over the past 40 years, what does Hilary make of it all?
It's all just a little bit of history repeated.
For planning a trip, it's absolutely perfect. The difficulty is that there's no monitoring of the information. There's a lot of inaccuracy. Guidebooks will always have their place, even in the preparation for a trip. But what's really fantastic is now you can book ahead.
The taxi's waiting.
In 2008, Hilary was made a member of the British Empire for her services to tourism and to charity. And in another landmark event in a few weeks' time, she celebrates her 70th birthday. So, is it time to slow down? Well, maybe not just yet.
I'm all set for a night flight to Ethiopia, and I've got a good book. Probably won't sleep much, but Ethiopia, here I come. Bye.
I'm leaving on a jet plane. Don't know when I'll be back again.
Hilary Bratt there, flying the flag for the good old-fashioned travel guide. I still use them. Well, sadly, that's all we've got time for this week on Fast Track. But join us next week when we find out whether cheaper holidays or social responsibility wins the day in Indonesia. And you can catch up with all our reports from around the world by logging onto our website, bbc.com/fasttrack, with even more on our sister site, bbc.com/travel, where this week you can find out about sailing around Turkey's Mediterranean coast. But until next week, from me, Rajan Datar, and the rest of the Fast Track team, thank you very much for watching, and goodbye.